Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel for my live reaction and player ratings live stream following Chelsea 2, Newcastle United 1. And to make things even better, I thought I was going to do this by my own, but I'm feeling good. So I was like, I see Ollie in the chat. I was like, let me message Ollie if he wants to come on. And he said, sure thing. So we're already joined. No, that's not how we do it. We're already joined by Ollie. Thank you very, very much for joining me, bro. It's a good day, innit? Like, back to winning ways. I know it could have been easier than it was. It could have been clearer than it was. But hey, at the end of the day, I'm just happy that we won because I almost don't count the midweek ones. So it felt like a little while since we last won. Obviously, lost at Anfield. Then we had an international break before that, drew to Forest before that. So it felt like a while since we won a game that we shouldn't be winning no matter what we do. So hey, I'm very, very happy. And well, two main talking points for me. Cole Palmer is the best player in the world, and it's an absolute robbery that Vinicius Jr., with how average that guy is going to win the Ballon d'Or. And also, Reece James kind of proved the point today, I will say. But Ollie, thank you very much for joining me, especially on such short notice. I didn't even read the little below caption you wrote on Cole Palmer with the Ballon d'Or, so I seemingly you agree. But yeah, bro, first of all, what do you think? Like, are you happy as well? Is there still a few negatives that dwell on your happiness, I guess?
It's difficult, isn't it? I think altogether was a good performance today from most of the team. I thought it was a pretty good team performance, more than it was necessarily just individuals, doing great individual things. I thought we created a lot of really good chances. We were just more of a team today than I'd seen against Forest and saw against Liverpool, and that was really nice to see. Few little things probably just on the defensive side of things. Maybe there's a question there about control as well. A couple times in the game we kind of faded out and came back in again. There's also something to be said about the referees this game, I think. But I'm sure we'll get into that. Yeah, I think overall I'd say it's a good performance. Not a perfect one by any stretch, but in a big game, it's a big statement of intent, and so it's nice to come out with the 3 points.
Exactly. It's super tricky to judge this kind of game, I think, because obviously Newcastle haven't been on the best run of form. I think this is now 5 games without a win for them. And that their last win was, I'm pretty sure, at some point in September. But at the same time, Newcastle are still not easy to beat. And I know, obviously, they have a terrible record at Stamford Bridge. My commentator said that they've only won once in the last 30 at the Bridge, and that was in 2012 when Papi Cisse scored that absolute worldie above Czech's head, which we all remember. But there's one thing, them not winning, but there's another thing, us not drawing. So, because, everyone always talks about, we haven't lost in so and so long. Well, I know we lost at Anfield, but outside of that. And we've only lost 3 games in 2024 and all sorts of things. And I'm like, it's all well and good and everything. But we still draw too many times. So, like, let's not always talk about, okay, we didn't lose, amazing. But I'd rather just win. Do you know what I mean? So, With that said, I'm just really happy about that. But I think you make a good point. And it was an interesting game today because there was periods and phases where I thought we were absolutely brilliant. The way we dominated them, the way we kept and managed to sustain pressure when we tried to attack. Okay, it didn't work out. We lost the ball. We won it straight back, pressured again. And there was periods in the game where that just looked absolutely phenomenal. And then there's other moments, like, for example, the equalizer we conceded, where it essentially comes out of a situation like that once the pressing tackle doesn't work, and all of a sudden there's gaps and gaps and gaps as if we're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And then just one after the other, unfortunately, don't really get it right. And then we're all of a sudden back at 1-1 when you're like, oh, my days. Of course, they just about get so lucky to not be offside, while Cole Palmer in the 5th minute was just about offside. But yeah, where do you stand on what I touched on earlier in terms of, because Newcastle haven't been in the best form recently, but are still clearly not a bad team, especially them not being in Europe this year. Where do you put that win? Like, because it's so difficult for me to kind of judge where Newcastle are.
Well, Newcastle do have a lot of quality. Eddie Howe's a really good coach. We've seen them in the past couple of seasons, do very well in the league. They are on a poor run of form right now, but also their players do have a lot of quality and a lot of, they have a lot of talent. They work hard for each other. You got players in there like Bruno Guimaraes, obviously Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento. They're both giving us trouble today. So I think to a certain degree they've been on a poor run of form, but they've not played poor. They've not played overly poorly in a lot of their games. They just really struggled to score goals. As there was that statistic that they broke today. They hadn't scored in something like over 600 minutes of football in open play until today. So I think it's more an issue for them about goal scoring. I think when the goals start rolling in for them, they'll be doing pretty well. So I think overall, given that maybe they weren't as much of a threat as they could have been, but at the same time, I think they still put in a good performance regardless. I would put this win maybe a little bit above the Bournemouth performance in terms of like grinded out the win against difficult opposition. They're probably a little bit more difficult again. Of course, Bournemouth are really well drilled, but Newcastle are another step up in quality. So yeah, I wouldn't. It's probably not our best performance of the season, but I think it's probably a good performance against one of the hardest teams we've had to play this season.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, in terms of level of our own performance, I think I'd put it higher than the Bournemouth one. But I think in terms of level of importance of getting the win, I would probably agree, because Bournemouth was in a slightly different way, because we should be beating them a bit more clearly than Newcastle. But then again, you have home and away. That obviously changes the situation. But I didn't really think we deserved to beat Bournemouth, and we still did, which made that win important. And in this one, it was just, okay, we hadn't won in a couple in the Prem, and we needed to make sure that we're up there. Obviously, that they made even sweeter by West Ham beating Manchester United in the last minute, which is fun. Palace beat Spurs, so Spurs and United losing on the same day.
And Villa dropped points this weekend as well.
Very true, very true.
The teams around us are not infallible. So for us to go, well, not go, but for us to have a game against a team like Newcastle, I mean, it'd be a different game altogether at St James's Park, but
yeah.
But for us to get the points out of that game when teams around us and teams who are supposed to be up where we are struggling is a really good statement of intent, I think.
Yep, absolutely. Ragnar says, time to have a beer, play FIFA, and listen to Vescoli talk Chelsea in the background. Hey, I love that. Have fun playing FIFA, and hopefully you win, Ragnar. Even though we don't call it FIFA anymore now, but we do realistically. Gabriel says, to be honest, I think time has come to change Sanchez. Well, we'll get into that in just a moment's time. Etze says, can we play Barca now? I kind of love these highlines. I think if we played Barcelona, we would absolutely rip them to shreds. But right now, everybody's saying they're the best team in the world. I said, if anybody watched this game, Real Madrid should have been 3-0 up at halftime, and instead Barca won 4-0. Mental game. But apparently, Mbappe's washed. So, that's quite funny. Big shout out to Lavia as well. See, this is interesting. We'll get into that, of course. I thought he fixed steadied himself, I guess, in the second half. But I thought in the first half, especially between like minute 20 and 45, I thought he was really struggling. But we'll debate him. Obviously, Kushal, if you're still here, please, disagree with us when we get to it. If you do disagree with us, Gabriel again says Cole Palmer is just a gem. Caicedo doing such a good silent job. I did think Caicedo was pretty good today, except for one moment, really. Good to see we are grinding out results. A season ago, we would have bottled this, and I actually agree with that very much. So,
yeah, I agree with that too.
Yeah, very good. Romani says, controversial take, but I feel Lavia wasn't as effective as he could have been. Sure, he was recovering the ball, but his passing left a lot to be desired, gave the ball away a few times too. I kind of agree. I mean, it's just, for Lavia, I think there was moments where what Romani said applies, and then there's moments what Kevin says applies where he was absolutely phenomenal. He was part of the game, he was fantastic, and other parts, I felt he struggled. But like I say, we'll get into it. Lee says, good sets of results to go with our win. The only downside to Man United losing is the fact that Ten Hag could soon be with someone good. I'm just going to enjoy the results. I mean, I am. If they just win once every 10 days, 42 weeks, they'll keep him for a little while longer. Just reading in Twitter, I assume they really want him out before our game. Well, bloody hope they don't. And Cook was so unlucky at the end. Ref robbed us of a third goal, more comprehensive win. I mean, let's just get it over the line, Ollie. Let's just get the referee chat out the way.
Sure.
There was a few occasions today. The first one I want to mention is Levi Colwill in the first half. Could he have been sent off for that? The foul was outside the box. But would the guy have been through on goal without the foul? Maybe.
I think we had the covering defenders.
I agree. But I think if we get a bit unlucky with the ref, that could be a red. Because the guy, there was coverage, but because how everybody had to accelerate and he was already sprinting, I think he might have been ahead. But no, I do in principle agree that it was probably the right decision. Next one was, the offsides. Obviously, VAR nowadays, they both looked right to me. Didn't look like they drew any dodgy lines, so fair enough.
It looked about right, didn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly. And then the two penalty moments, one penalty moment, I suppose, first and foremost, on Nkunku. They overturned it. What did you make of that?
It is a soft penalty, but I've seen softer penalties go against us. So I don't know. It's a tough one. I think Mate, if I take off my Chelsea goggles for a minute, I'd probably say it's not a penalty. It's really, really soft. I have seen them given, but I mean, we're in games gone territory, I think, if we're given that.
I mean, for me, the annoying thing about it for me was the whole given first and then overturned, because it's like the whole idea of what's a clear and obvious error and what gets overturned and what gets looked at and what doesn't just doesn't make any sense to me. And I just think it's just so hypocritical, and it's one way this week and it's completely different the next week. And it's just like, it makes the whole situation of VAR being that completely and utterly pointless when we're deciding newly every single week, is something a foul that we need to look at, or is something not a foul that we need to look at? Like, best example being that, in my opinion, blatant penalty, a blatant foul by Trent Alexander-Arnold on Sancho last week. Fair enough, the ref doesn't see it, but the VAR should see it. And how VAR doesn't give that, but then overturns this, to me, it's just like at least send the ref to the monitor for the whole Trent Sancho thing. If the ref then says it's not a pen, fair enough, it's his decision. But I just hate when the ref gets sent to the monitor, they're changing his decision. Don't go, either just tell him to change the decision, because they're clearly not doing it themselves anyway. It's like, whenever they go to the monitor, decision changed. Whenever they don't go to the monitor, no decision changed, other than obviously offside. So that just frustrates me. I agree with you. It's probably not a penalty, but I think once it's given, I think there's enough there that it should not be overturned. That's where
I could see that. I don't think it's a big enough error that that VAR should have stepped in, but that's the nature of these things now. Like, we're beholden to some of these sort of slightly more grey area kind of rules of the game. The referees are held to the same standard. I mean, if we don't like it, we need the rules to change.
We do, unfortunately. The only thing, and why I kind of got into that, is because I'm not sure if I'll give Nkunku unlucky, if I'm honest. I think he could have stayed up first on that penalty. Now, do I think it should have stood as a penalty because the ref gave it? Yes. But do I think Nkunku could have stayed up and just scored? Yes. Do I think 3 minutes earlier he was being incredibly selfish and stupid? Instead of laying it to Palmer, who almost guaranteed scores, he's trying to do shimmies in the box, giving Newcastle more and more time to put players between him and the ball, or between the goal and the ball. So I'm not giving him unlucky. I'm giving him, I'm annoyed by you. Why don't you play better? That's why. I don't know. That was my reaction to Nkunku today. I don't know about you, bro.
He had a difficult game today, I thought. He always seemed to be dangerous and actually try to do something with the ball, which is more than we've seen in the past when he has come on. But he just couldn't quite make it happen today, which is a bit unlike him. He's usually the other way around. He usually kind of comes on, doesn't really do a whole lot, and then bags a goal anyway. So it's, I suppose it's it makes him look well-rounded at least. But now I'd like to see him come on, look good, and score a goal, please.
Yes, no, I agree. Just to go through a few more comments, Bobby Fairview says, it's better to be lucky than to be good. That's the definition of Maresca. Newcastle was trash and results went our way in the Fulham, Spurs and United games. I think that's an unnecessarily negative outlook on the situation. I don't think Newcastle were trash necessarily. I think we had moments where we dominated them. Then I think Eddie Howe during the first half clearly made a tactical change that made us struggle a little bit more. And then at halftime, Maresca adapted things again that made Newcastle struggle a little bit more again. And then as the second half went on, it kind of became a bit more even and a bit more stagey. I don't know if that's the right word. But I don't know. I think that's harsh to say better be lucky than good. I don't know. I think we more than deserve to win that game today. Mason says, game week 10 and Maresca still don't know his best team. I was surprised with James at left back today. So, Ollie, why don't we get into talking about the lineup? Now, usually I like to bring up Chelsea's the graphic that they post, but today that doesn't really explain the whole story. So this is how we lined up on the ball. Reece James, all of a sudden, none of us saw this coming, right? We saw Gusto and Reece James, but last week we played Gusto at left back and Reece James at right back. Today it was all of a sudden the other way around. Now, we'll get into why that was and what logic that had in a second. But in general, when we had kickoff and Reece James was left back, how confused were you, Ollie? Because I was very confused.
Yeah, highly confused. Just, we were kind of, I suppose, all expecting him for James to be the main right back on the right, maybe Gusto to play on the left, as you said, and as he had played before. I think there were some reservations about that concept. I know you were pretty happy with him playing there the last time we saw him play there, but I was less so. I thought he did all right, but I think he looked uncomfortable and out of position there. So it was interesting to see them swap it. this time, and have James play as that more sort of left centre back role, and have Gusto, well, just sort of all the way up, really, right, properly attacking, getting absolutely everywhere. It was interesting. Probably aided by the decision to help James's legs, not have him sprinting up and down the pitch all game, which probably benefited him. And you could argue vindicated Maresca today in that decision as well, because James from that left-hand side made several absolutely critical defensive measures. And I don't think Gusto makes those, certainly not playing in the same position. So, yeah, it's probably there is something about that that sounds good. Helps James's legs, gets him good game time, comfortable playing. 1v1 and on the wing and at centre back. So he's happy anywhere. So it's not really much of a drop off in quality, but you do lose his attacking output as well. From right centre back, he can still at least do crosses. If he does get himself up the pitch a little bit from sort of that left centre back role. If anything, the furthest forward he's really going to get is by inverting into midfield from there. If he steps forward, and of course the angle's wrong because he's right-footed, so he's not going to be making many crosses. So there is something to say about it, kind of negating him. I think Reece James is a flexible enough player to be able to do multiple things. I think he can play on the right centre back and put those crosses in the box when we need them. I think he can play there seemingly on the left centre back role in a more defensive kind of posture. Yeah, so there's I don't think I'm not sure if this is a full-on long-term solution from Maresca or if it was just something for this game. But for this game, it seemed to work.
It did seem to work. Yeah, it's an interesting one. And if people say, oh, he didn't do enough here or there or whatever, let's also keep in mind that this was also Reece's first time playing in that position. As much as he's very talented and very good and our captain and all those other things, still makes a difference when you're playing a position for the first time. That will always take a little bit of getting used to, no matter how good you are. Now, I think in terms of his back post defending, maybe being on the left helps him. Maybe he finds it easier being shifting in that way, maybe because he can lead with his right foot towards the goal. I don't know. But you see, because usually I think that's one of Reece's biggest weaknesses, crosses to the back post. And today he bailed us out with that on 2, if not 3 major occasions. But just quickly, as we talk about this Reece James situation still, the thing that I find a bit strange still is, why did Cucurella play 90 minutes on Thursday? Now, you can see there, off the ball, because we're playing Lavia and Caicedo as our midfield pivot, like we did at Anfield. When we do that, we don't have one of them push up into the 10 position like Enzo Fernandez does usually when he officially starts in the double pivot. Because when we play Lavia and Caicedo, we essentially ask Gusto to do that. Last week, we asked him to do it from the left. Today, we asked him to do it from the right. And the reason why I said I thought he was good against Liverpool purely because I think I'm not expecting my right back to be a great centre attacking mid. And I know the manager put him there, but I think when the fullback is asked to do that kind of job, I'm most looking at, is he able to fill his position the way he should? And I felt at Anfield, Gusto was very good at being back in left back when he needed to be. And I thought he was very good at being a passing option in the attacking third when he needed to be that. I didn't think he was necessarily great with his crossing or with his shooting, but I thought the tactical role that he was given that day, I thought he filled that role well. Even if when he necessarily got the ball, didn't always do everything right, and that same thing applied today, I felt. But it's not ideal. Now, I understand against this kind of team, and I also understand away at Anfield that you maybe go for slightly more defensive stability, slightly more physical presence in midfield with Lavia and Caicedo. I still don't think we should be doing this every week, though. Maybe once Reece is fit enough to do what Gusto did, maybe this becomes a lot more viable, because imagine Reece in all these shooting positions Gusto is in. Imagine a fit Reece. You could be seeing 10 goals from Reece James in a season easily if he plays this position, and he can. But I'm not sure if his legs hold up that position, because that's a lot of running.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens. I'm interested to see if Maresca can get Cucurella and James into the team, because that for me provides the most balance. Because obviously James is naturally right-footed. Cucurella is naturally left-footed. They can both invert really well into midfield. So you could always have a situation where one goes, one stops, and if you can get them rotating like that and have both those players are doing that at the same time, you're going to cause a lot of confusion for the opposition and create passing angles and all sorts of stuff that is going to make it easier to play through teams. So I'm wondering if that's just a case of fitness yet, whether that's going to happen soon, or maybe for some reason Maresca doesn't see that as quite so viable. I guess we'll see.
I guess we will see, absolutely. And to just quickly talk about maybe why last week we had Gusto doing what Reece James did, well, playing at left back, but then filling, up the left channel while Reece James was on the right. Well, the difference is essentially last week Fofana was suspended. Today he was not. I think that's the main difference, really, because if it was different, like if we shifted, you would have had Cohen at left centre back, which he can do, but I don't think he's as good at it as at right centre back. As a central centre back. But Fofana is also not as. I don't want Fofana to be the main build-up in passing. I don't want him to be that, and clearly Maresca doesn't either. And if you did Reece on the right, that's what you would have had to do, or you would have had to not play Fofana. You would have had to either start Badiashile or Vega.
But the other thing, the other option, I mean, like, I said this before the game, was that you don't necessarily, like, in the same way that you can have James out on the left there, seemingly. Yeah. Having Fofana out there wouldn't be the worst thing either. You can have then James in his dominant position, sort of crossing from right centre back. Fofana's good 1v1 against a lot of wingers. A lot of those wingers on the right hand side like to cut inside as well. So it's, I don't know. There's something to be said about him maybe being able to play there as well.
By the way, sorry.
Crikey, already flipping out.
Yeah, 9 minutes in. I mean,
wow.
Still a lot of potential for VAR getting involved, but FOTMOB just informed me it's 1-0.
Yeah,
hasn't told me who scored yet. But just to quickly respond to what you said, I think that's a valid point. My only logic in maybe why Maresca didn't do that is Reece James is just more comfortable on the ball. And if you're just better on the ball, you're probably more comfortable on your wrong side, especially than you are on your good side, if that makes sense.
I could see that. You don't want to necessarily limit too much in terms of the passing and stuff, because I know it's how important we are from playing out from the back. I guess it's just interesting to see that a right-footed player can play there, Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's valid. That is valid. I mean, I would probably still have preferred Cucurella to play, personally. But then again, Reece cleared it off the line twice. And would Cucurella have done that in that position? Maybe, maybe not. Reece certainly more physical. So against this kind of team, maybe it worked out. So, hey, I'm not going to complain about it too much. But because we spend so much time talking about Reece James, I think we're not quite there yet in terms of his rating. But I quickly want to talk about the captain situation, just super quickly, right? Maresca has publicly challenged James to display more in terms of personality behind the scenes at Chelsea, having also spoken to him about the matter in private. Ollie, and please in the chat reply to on this topic as well. By the way, it was Saka that scored. What did you make of this, and how do you what did this situation change in how you view today's game? And did you take a conclusion out of it in the end? Did James prove a point today? Was that enough to say he proved a point?
Well, I think Maresca partially did say something that a lot of us fans probably have thought at times, since Reece James has become captain, and that you don't see a lot of leadership from him, whether it's because of fitness or whether anything else. You don't see a lot of leadership from him either on the pitch or off it. He's quite a quiet guy, and like I said, because he's been injured, you don't see him on the pitch to have that leadership either. So, with him coming back into the side and being fitter now, it's important to notice that I think that Maresca wants to challenge him. And he is saying in a sense, prove me wrong. And I think I said this when we were talking about this the other day. Reece James is a big boy. I think he would have seen this as motivation. You don't get to be a Premier League footballer, captaining your side for one of the best teams in the world without having a little bit of resilience, even if your manager does call you out like that. And I thought that James would use it as motivation and try and push on and prove him wrong. And I think what he was looking for in Maresca today was a captain's performance from James. And I think that's what he gave us, because there were several times where, not in every aspect, admittedly, but there were several times where he really bailed us out in the same way that a strong captain does for your team. And, being that person that your other teammates can rely on in those critical moments to always hold the standard, to always have a good game, to always do well, and to then do extra as well and save your whole team's bacon on more than one occasion. That showed leadership from me today. So for me, I think he has at least started to prove Maresca wrong on that. It sounded a bit to me like Maresca had put him on notice, and said, listen, like we're going to need a leadership here. Either it's going to come from you or we're going to do it eventually with someone else. Maybe you get the season to prove it. And so James has taken to that straight away and so, well, I don't need the season, Guess we'll see. I guess we'll see how it plays out. But it looks like a masterstroke from Maresca right now.
It does a little bit. It does a little bit. It was also interesting before the game when he's speaking to Chelsea. I'm not sure if he said it to other media as well. He slightly, maybe backtracked is not the right word, but he slightly went away from individually criticizing Reece James the way that Lees came across in these quotes. Maybe Maresca chose the wrong press conference to make these statements because there's many, on video press conferences where it's much more clear what is said, and it's much more difficult for journalists to take things out of context and make things sound a bit different in written form than the way Maresca actually said them. So I will criticize that slightly of Maresca. I'm also still not 100% sure if I'm fully with Maresca on having to say this publicly. Now, as this tweet says here, and as was well publicized within this press conference from Maresca, he did speak about him privately beforehand. The thing that I don't know and we don't know is when that happened. If that happened 3 days before, I think this is too soon and unnecessary to speak it publicly. If this conversation happened 3 weeks ago, 2 months ago, and Maresca hasn't really seen an improvement, then I think this is valid. But because we simply do not know when the conversation took place, I'm not going to really say I think Maresca did good or Maresca did bad. I'm just going to sit on the fence, as weird as that sounds. Because I still, as much as maybe it worked and whatever, I still don't think it's necessary that this needs to be talked out in public. Because you can say, give him a kick up the arse, but why isn't it a kick up the arse if he tells him in person? Or if in person, maybe tell him in front of the whole squad and not just alone. But does it have to be in the media? We know how toxic our fan base is. Do we need to give people ammunition? I don't know. That's the only thing I would argue. And I would also argue, if you've been, I know he's captain, and like you said, he's a big boy, so you need to handle it. But if you've been injured as much as Reece James is, there's a lot of talk about mental health in football. If you've been injured as much as he is, there's probably a lot that he needs to deal with himself. And I know that's maybe why he wasn't the best choice for captain, because we know that he was going to be out quite regularly. But I do think it is difficult if you're constantly injured and you're back, then you're back, play 2 games, injured again. It's difficult to do all of your off-pitch captain duties perfectly. So I think Reece is one of these players, a bit like Eden Hazard for Belgium. He's not going to be the most vocal. He's not going to be the most he's going to be a captain by performance. And I think that's what he did today. I think Reece James will be a good captain when he's fit and able to play. And Reece James, maybe down the line, but not immediately, will not be the best captain off the pitch. While I think Azpilicueta was the complete opposite. I think Azpilicueta was a bad captain on the pitch, but a great captain off the pitch. So, yeah, I mean, someone said there was still not enough, did I see that message still? No. Someone was saying, still not seeing enough of him kind of vocally on the pitch. I did see a little bit of that, but actually, it's literally the message that I have on screen. Cranky said it. He says, big ups to Ola Oli and Laurenz. Good win today. RJ really stepped up in terms of performance, but still lacking verbally slightly. Man, oh man, and Kunku, let's leave it there. There was a couple of occasions, that's what I wanted to say, where I did notice Reece James speaking and, pointing and directing people. And I agree, he needs to do better. My biggest thing with him being a bad captain is still the fact that he gets himself sent off in the space of 5 games that he played, and then doesn't even apologize. And I've spoken to multiple people about this. Some people don't think that footballers have a responsibility to apologize to their fans. Fair enough if you think that. And I think that in general, fair enough. But I think the captain is a bit different from that rule. And people will say, but did John Terry apologize after his red card in Barcelona? First of all, I don't know. Second of all, 12 years ago, social media was very different. Footballers communicated with fans very differently 12 years ago than they do now. So I don't think that's necessarily a fair comparison. Also, John Terry had by that point done a lot to not really need to apologize himself as much, because he's proven himself a lot more than Reece James has, in particular as captain. But yeah, I think enough chat about Reece James. But at the end of the day, he's done good. So he did good today, kind of proved the point. Let's see how it develops. I'm still not 100% sure if I back Maresca on talking about this publicly. Before we talk about individuals, looking at the overall stats, I'm slightly surprised, bro. We lost on XG. Did you feel like that happened? I didn't feel like that happened.
No, not at all.
3 shots on target. How can they have more XG? I'm baffled.
Well, I'm trying to think, what chances did they have? They had, I don't know if it counts as one, when they were about to shoot, and we'll get to Robert Sanchez and all of that in a minute, but that kind of open goal scramble scenario, I don't know if they got a shot off in doing that and it was kind of blocked. It all happened very quickly. So I don't know, I don't know if that would have counted as like a large amount of XG.
I mean,
or
supposedly
what.
they had 3 big chances, so I guess I would assume that Isak one that you're talking about is a big chance, probably. But
You'd think so.
yeah, I don't fully like XG is XG. It's numbers, it's stats, so it's difficult to say. I disagree with this, but that's not how I felt the game today.
It
I
doesn't
didn't feel like
reflect.
they were
Yeah,
more dangerous than we were.
but people like to say that stats are like a translucent window. Like it shows some things, but it doesn't show all things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's spot on. And by the way, Virgil van Dijk just equalised for Liverpool. So that's that. Interesting game going on.
Good.
Hopefully they draw.
A big draw would be great for us.
Yeah,
I mean, not that we're going to be challenging either of them at the end of the season, but keep the illusion alive.
It's always good for if it feels like we're a little bit like there, maybe it keeps the motivation within the players a little bit higher. I don't know. But I do find that interesting. We had more shots on target, slightly more possession. I'm slightly surprised by this. You can obviously talk about we had a very narrow offside goal disallowed. They had it allowed. So obviously that offside goal will not show anywhere in XG. Fair enough. We had a penalty that, in our opinion, at least could have stood after the ref had given it already. That obviously now isn't there either because it was never taken. So it is an interesting one. But let's get back to the lineup and let's talk about one guy that outside of Reece James and Cole Palmer needs the most talked about. Robert Sanchez. And I tweeted during
not for a good reason.
No. And how often is he to mention him for good reasons? But I tweeted if Winstanley and Stewart watch this and still don't think we need a new first choice goalkeeper, they might as well resign tomorrow because what is the point? Like I know they signed Mike Penders, and I also know there's still Jurgensen who maybe needs a little bit more time, but clearly the manager thinks Sanchez is better. Otherwise, Sanchez wouldn't be playing every Premier League game. But honestly, he's such a liability. I can't handle it anymore. I seriously cannot handle it. Like every time he gets the ball, man. I shit myself.
I'm sick of it. The anxiety I have when he has the ball is just, it's just daft. And you can't imagine that's making the defenders ahead of him feel any better, knowing that any minute this clown can drop an absolute clanger.
Exactly. Like it just confuses me. I mean, you see it there, 50% pass completion, 50. Now, I know that tells you, and it's 6 out of 25 long balls, so that's 19 long balls missed. That tells you only one of his not accurate passes was a low ball, I guess, or not a long ball. So it's not about the simple passing that was the issue today. But what is this? Why is this happening? Like, I don't understand. I really baffled. Like, I know against Brighton, this kind of happened or whatever, because they played an insanely high line and that's how we tried to beat them. And this was on a couple of other occasions this happened as well. But I didn't feel like Newcastle's high line was like that today. Now, they had a high line on occasion, but did it feel like if you played a long ball to Jackson against Dan Burn, that was going to lead to us scoring? Because I didn't. But first and foremost, I want to say the amount of times Robert Sanchez punted the ball out of play today was unbelievable. And that's what I would love to see in accurate long balls, not just accurate long balls, because were they accurate by a yard or two away, or were they inaccurate by 50 meters? And that's what was half of Sanchez's passes today. Out for throw-ins, out for goal kicks, miles and miles, nowhere near Madueke, straight into the feet of opponents' defenders. Even when he didn't go properly long and he just kicked it straight to their players in midfield as we were transitioning and as we were, shaping out in our on-the-ball possession shape. And he passed it straight to them. And then they run straight into an attack. And he does this every single week. Like, he does it every single week. And it's just utterly infuriating. And I'm genuinely, like, Jurgensen, since that Servette away game, hasn't done a single thing wrong. So, are we really in a situation like last year where we need Sanchez to get injured for the second choice to get a chance? Because we didn't think last season Petrovic would be better than Sanchez. Turns out he was miles better. Now, maybe not at passing, but is anyone trying to tell me Sanchez is good at passing now? Are you really trying to tell me Petrovic would have worse passing than Sanchez at the moment?
Yeah, it's hard to justify him starting still. I don't know what more he's got to do wrong to get dropped, to be honest with you. He seems he's just away with the fairies half the time. That's just how I see it. He seems just like I don't know whether he's not concentrating or he's trying too hard or he's being asked to do something he simply just can't do. But it's just not working for him. Like that, I've said for a long time, the goalkeeping situation is clearly the biggest hole we have at the club right now. Because I know we've got Penders coming, but he's not ready yet. Jorgensen's
And he's
good, but
only
he's not ready
18. Like,
yet.
it's going to be at least 3 years until he's ready. Let's
Yeah,
be honest.
Jorgensen's a decent keeper, but he's not ready yet either. Sanchez, he's one of the oldest players we have in the squad, so I think his experience is chosen as well. So it's yeah, there just feels like there's a gap there for like a really quality experienced keeper that we just do not have right now. It still seems to me that signing him was in a way just trying to sweeten the deal for Caicedo, which we then had to pay over the odds for regardless. So
Yeah.
it feel every day his signing seems more irrelevant to me.
See, if Robert Sanchez was here as our backup goalkeeper, I wouldn't have that much of an issue with that. Like, he seems personality-wise not the worst guy to have around. He seems, because he's obviously Spanish, but kind of grew up in England. He's very much kind of multicultural, which, because we have a lot of Latin Americans in the team and obviously a lot of English in the team, I think that's a good mix to have. And he's also a little bit more senior than most of the others. So I think as a second-choice goalkeeper, I'd be quite happy with Robert Sanchez. Now, it's paid a bit too much for him to be second-choice goalkeeper, but Jorgensen wasn't that much cheaper, and he's now second-choice goalkeeper anyway. So like Yaro said, we signed like 20 goalkeepers and none of them are convincing. And that's the annoying thing. Like, how many, like, we spoke about this so many times, Ollie, didn't we? Like, we spent at least 80 million on goalkeepers over the last few years, and we don't have a single good one. Like, you could have just not signed all 4 of them. You could have kept Kepa as the bench player because he was clearly happy doing, like, I'm not saying you should have done that, but I'm saying you could have done that and signed one 60 to 80 million pound goalkeeper would have been miles better. Like, I mean, Blue Boy Ultra says, to be fair, I think he's actually sellable now, whereas before I didn't think he was. You mean now in compared to a few weeks ago, or you mean now compared to when we signed him? Because sellable, maybe, but sellable for more than we bought him?
I was going to say we bought him for like 25 million, man. Like, it's not that easy. I don't think, we've paid, I think that's a Premier League record for that as well for a goalkeeper. So it's
Is it?
Yeah, I think so. So it's not a great from another Premier League club, I mean. Oh no, except maybe Ryan might have gone for more from Brentford to Arsenal, but still a lot of money for a goalkeeper. Yeah, he's just not at it. He's just not on the level.
No, he really isn't. I mean, Pillowy Yeti says we can get 40 million for him. But I think you're very confident in things there. I mean, bloody hell.
Is stupid enough to pay 40 million for a goalkeeper that costs you a goal every other game?
I mean, I would say Man United, but they seem to be on the biggest cost-saving spree I've ever seen any football club do ever. So, I mean, did you hear about this? United, they essentially sacked Sir Alex Ferguson. They cancelled their Christmas party. They cancelled, and then they asked Man City if the 2 players of theirs that are somehow nominated at the Ballon d'Or ceremony on Monday, I think, they asked Man City if their players could fly on the Man City plane because they didn't want to have to buy their own plane. I'm like, bro, you're Man United. What is happening? I'm baffled. But yeah, man. Maybe Ramsdale cost more as well, whichever way it is. I mean, Ollie, in terms of today's rating, what would you give him? Now, did he make necessarily a huge mistake that cost us a goal? No, I don't think the goal is his fault at all. And we only conceded 1. Did he stop a goal? Really? No. Did I also think he got lofted by simple crosses way too easily and needed Reece James to bail him out at the back post? Yes. Considering he's one of the tallest goalkeepers in the league with the biggest wingspan in the league, you can't get chipped like that. Like, what are you doing? But the passing
we already know his body is absolutely antithetical to the way his mind works as a goalkeeper. Because like, why else would for the goal we discussed? I can't remember if it was Liverpool or not at Forest. I can't remember, or a different game. But he just made himself as small as possible. He made himself
Liverpool, the second goal
against Liverpool. So I'm not sure I'm not sure, because the other thing is like, you've got these slightly younger players who also kind of have this what we call a bozo gene, and you can argue Mudrik's got it. You could argue to a certain degree Madueke's got it. You could argue a couple of our players have got it, but they're all young enough to eventually grow out of it. Yeah. Eventually, yeah. Sanchez is already what, 27, 26. Yeah. Like he is who he is as a player. Like, I mean, I know goalkeepers can mature late, and he probably will get better as the later he gets into his career. But those kind of moments, like, if you're 26 and you haven't gotten those kind of errors out of your game yet, it's very unlikely for it to happen in the future.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. What rating would you give him today then, with everything considered?
I was trying. I didn't actively cost us a goal, so I think I'll give him a 4.5. Maybe that feels harsh. Maybe it feels generous. It's hard to know. He didn't actively cost us today, but that also wasn't because of him.
Yeah.
Other players bailed him out today.
Yeah, exactly. Whether it was that huge Isak chance by Caicedo bailed us out, that was stemmed from a bad Sanchez pass. There was another chance in the first half that stemmed from a bad Sanchez pass. There was moments where we constantly gave the ball. Like, you could talk about the possession stats, and that's partly because of Sanchez, because he 19 times hit the long ball into no man's land. But yeah, I probably agree with the 4.5, to be honest. Like, I was thinking 4 to 4.5. Like you say, he didn't cost us directly in terms of a goal, even if that's other players bailing him out. But yeah, I mean, we need to leave room for rating him worse when he actually costs us goals.
Yeah,
Because we know it happens. So, we need to just keep a little bit of room for that. But let's move on. Levi Colwill, we kind of touched on him, that potential, very small potential, but still potential red card in the first half early on. Otherwise, I thought he was pretty good. Could he be, could he have done a bit better, a bit differently for the goal that we conceded? It's a weird one. That goal to me is 90% on the midfield, like 65% on Lavia, a little bit on Neto, a little bit on Caicedo, and then the rest is on Gusto. I didn't really feel like once that cross was played, I'm going to blame either Fofana for playing him onside. That's more unlucky, I think, or Colwill for getting in the middle, because if he gets in the middle, he might score an own goal. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but I think otherwise he was pretty good. I thought he defended pretty well. I thought he passed it out pretty well. I mean, 87% could be a bit higher, and the long balls as well, but 2 out of 3 ground duels. Okay, 1 out of 3 average duels could be a little bit better, but I think it was decent. But what did you make of Levi Colwill today?
Yeah, I thought he was decent today. Had a few sort of slightly shakier moments, but other than that, I don't really remember him putting much of a foot wrong. He looked quite comfortable on the ball. I think having him in the center there really does, make sense. I'm not convinced he had a terrible game today. I think some people like to they don't see him like pinging like balls all over the place, and they consider it a bad game. But for me, he found a lot of good line breaking passes. He cut stuff out when he needed to. I think overall it was quite a mature performance from him, to be honest. So against a team that a team that is hard to beat, they're a hard nosed team, Newcastle. I know they haven't gotten many points this season, but they give everyone a good game that they play.
True.
I think Colwill, I would give him a 6 today. I think he did enough to be about average, maybe a little better.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was thinking somewhere between a 5.5 and a 6.5. I think all of those would be somehow justifiable, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think a 6 is fine. I don't really have super much more to say, but just as we are talking, Maresca said something about Sanchez, which is interesting. So I know we just finished talking about him, but I guess let's bring it on. Maresca, when asked on Sanchez distribution, he says, I asked Robert to do that. The moment he stops doing that, he's not going to play. It's not his mistake. It's my mistake. Now, obviously, I am not in this press conference. I will watch it later. Maybe we'll find out more. But what do you mean you ask Robert to do that? To do what? To punt it long so often? Or to pass it to the opponent? Like, what specifically do you ask him to do?
Yeah, because they're not asking him to, like shit the bed twice a week. Because clearly they're not saying make mistakes. And this is kind of what I was getting at earlier, where I was saying, like, I'm not sure what it is with Sanchez, whether he's just incompetent or whether it's just something that he just straight up doesn't have the ability to do what Maresca is asking of him, and so he fucks it up all the time.
Yeah.
And this would lend credence to that by him going, well, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm asking him to do that because that's the way we play. I'll got a solution for you, Enzo. Don't play him then. Drop him because he's shit. And play Jorgensen instead until we can find out what's going on.
Exactly. Like, I'm a little bit confused by this. Like I get protecting your players, and from that perspective, I don't have an issue with that, because, I would prefer him to talk about these things privately if he's not happy about it. But after you've just publicly shamed Reece James as being a bad captain, I'm not really sure whether you need to publicly protect Robert Sanchez for being a bad goalkeeper. Like, I don't really know if that kind of makes sense as a comparison of the two situations. But yeah, I mean, hey, Maresca is taking the blame, so Maresca, you're getting a low rating today because you're asking Sanchez to do things he's terrible at. So please stop doing that. You know what I mean? Like, we are clearly a very good team at playing through a press. So how about, instead of punting it long to out of play every single time, how about you just pass it to Reece James or Colwell or Fofana? Just an idea. Like, I know they frustrate me as well, but all you really need is for the defenders to position themselves well, and then for the goalkeeper to keep it simple. That's all it needs. Like, and I'm not like against Brighton, and even on occasion today, play it long, sure. But as a goalie, if you feel it's not really working for you today, don't try the risky passes. Like, sure, if you punt it and it goes out of play, at least you're not going to concede from it. But he also did two today, where he played it into the middle of the pitch to an opponent, and they had big chances from it on both occasions. And those are the ones that we need to stop. I don't care if it's manager instruction or not to play a long ball in that situation, but don't play a long ball into midfield where there's only opponents. You know, that's not good. So I respect Maresca for protecting him. I don't, in a way, because he didn't protect Reece. But I think Jurgensen is better. And I know it's not the same level of opposition, but when I see Jurgensen pressed, I've never once been scared that he's going to pass it to the opponent, because he hasn't passed it to the opponent yet. So, you know, and Jurgensen has played how many games so far this season? 3. Well, including Servette, 5. And how often has he passed it to the opponent? Not as often as Sanchez did in the 9 Premier League games. That's for flipping sure.
And I would argue not as much as Sanchez would have likely given it away in those games if he had played instead.
100%. 100%. Absolutely. Let's move on and let's talk about, I mean, we spoke about Reece James a lot already, so let's get on to Fofana. And I think the biggest talking point with him is arguably his knee, because, I mean, he was already playing it with a tape on it to begin with, but he pretty much plays with some sort of taping around his knee every game anyway. Then he commits a fairly crazy tackle, which wasn't really necessary in that moment, kind of screws his own body up. Really looked like he bent his knee really awkwardly, and I was very
it looked horrible on the replay. Like,
exactly,
his knee was going at a weird angle. It's tweaked it for sure.
Yeah. So what I want to say now in hindsight, I'm impressed that he managed to play the whole game. And I hope he didn't make something potentially worse, but I would assume not. Also interesting that at halftime, he made it to halftime, and then at halftime, they strapped his knee up much more, well, severely, much more, heavily, which maybe gave him a little bit of stability, but he still seemed quick as shit, and he still seemed very much up for it. I'm not saying he was amazing, but he still certainly tried his best. I mean, Ollie, outside of being injured, and maybe that also is the reason for a couple of moments where he was maybe a step late or a step early, because he was clearly uncomfortable even for more of the game. But what did you make of him? I saw a lot of people say he was really bad. I think that's a bit harsh. I don't know. What did you make of him? Maybe that helps me make up my mind as well.
I think to a certain degree you're right. I think the when he tweaked his knee like that, it did look painful, and so that clearly will have affected his performance somewhat, a little bit. I still think he was poor today, even with that, because if it was hurting him to that extent, he should be asking to go off. I know every player wants to play, but you also have to think about what's best for the team in that moment. If you've got to come off, you've got to come off. So if he's good enough to play on, he shouldn't still be making mistakes as a result of that, and you can't use it as a crutch. I thought a lot. He was second to a lot of things today. He was really rash at times. Occasionally, he was running out of position. I'm not going to give him too much flack for the offside for the goal, but that is frustrating because he is almost doing the splits to put Isak onside. It feels like, I understand he's trying to block the cross, and maybe that's like you say because he's half a yard back from where he originally kind of would be. But I think you got, like, especially him, like being injured and being hurt, you got to know your body, man. And so if you think you've got a better chance of putting him offside instead of going for it, maybe that's the better call. It's marginal, it's quick in the moment. He probably just decided to do it on instinct. I doubt it was like a decision necessarily.
It's also like, realistically, Isak's positioning is terrible, because Isak should never be this close to being offside. So, like, I understand the centre back isn't even considering, because it's essentially like a cut across cross rather than like, a cross from further back where there could be an offside. You're expecting the ball to be ahead of the player for that type of cross. And it's purely Isak not being positioned very well that there was even danger of that offside. So I agree with you. To me, that's more unlucky than anything else. Like,
I think
everything in every moment. You can't see where Isak is.
I did think he still recovered well, regardless. Actually, though, like I thought, like he grew back into the game after he had tweaked his knee. He kind of like struggled for a little while. They were targeting him a little bit, and he kind of came back into it stronger. Gusto did a really good job actually coming back and helping and supporting him. I thought. I think he was worse than Colwill today. I think he made more mistakes than Colwill today. So I certainly couldn't give him the same or higher than Colwill today. But I don't think he was absolutely terrible. I think I give him a 5.
Okay, very interesting. Just
I think the injury, you do have to consider it, but at the same time, you can't use it as the only basis for why he was poor today.
No, I agree with that. I mean, looking at his duels, 3 out of 6 ground duels is okay. 4 out of 7 aerial duels is, I would say, pretty good.
He wasn't worse than Sanchez either.
Slightly higher than Colwill's as well, but obviously less passes.
He wasn't worse than Sanchez either, and if we've given him a 4.5, Fofana shouldn't get any lower than that. So that kind of makes it 5.5 is about right.
I was gonna go 5.5, but it depends now on you whether you want to go with that or if we give the people a poll.
Give him a poll. Give the people a poll. Let democracy win.
There you go. Rating for Fofana, and I'll give you guys the options between a 5 and a 5.5. The poll will be in the live chat just now. So please place your vote. We'll come back to it in a little bit. We already spoke quite a lot about Reece James in terms of, his captaincy duties being questioned and whatever else, but also his obviously goal line clearances. Now, it's difficult because when I see Reece James play, we know what Reece James can do. So in this position, but also at Liverpool, he seems very limited. It seems like we're not anywhere near getting the best out of Reece James. And I do still question whether I wouldn't rather just play Cucurella and Gusto rather than a not fit Reece James whose hamstrings I need to look after. But the fact that he played 90 today, cleared the ball off the line twice, had that big header at the very end as well. With all of that said, there was maybe one moment early in the game where he was slightly called out of position, but again, first time playing there, and that didn't happen anymore after that. So, is 7.5 too high?
I was going to say an 8.
I'll give you an 8.
Because I was really impressed with the performance overall. Thought he looked comfortable and assured. I didn't think he really I don't think a player got the wrong side of him or got the better of him all game. Saved the team 3 times today. I'm not really sure he could be asking much more. And that's part of the reason why I think I said that. I think he's kind of proved Maresca wrong a little bit because he's come out publicly, and maybe it was brash. It's a gamble to criticize him publicly like that. You don't know whether a player's going to just rise to that or crumble. Reece rose to it. Probably a testament to him knowing him reasonably well by this stage and being the captain. So I imagine they talk quite a fair bit. I'm overall pleased with his performance today. I think an 8 is fair.
Yeah,
and out of position too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good point as well. I think also when you look at the stats, 3 out of 3 air duels, 2 out of 3 ground duels. So in total, out of 6 duels, 1-5, lost 1. Plus the clearances we spoke about. Okay, the crosses maybe can be a bit better. 4 out of 8 long balls also good. He played a couple of ones that nearly came off, like one to Jackson, one to Noni, which could have also resulted in a red card for Dan Burn potentially for that arm pull that the ref didn't flag at all. I think Reece James did very well today. Maybe I would, I'm somewhere between a 7.5 and an 8. I'll just give him the 8. I'm happy with it. But somewhere around that realm. But where do you stand on that? Do you also where do you stand on? Okay, it's great to see Reece back. It's also smart that we're using him in a way that he's not overusing his body, and now still because of that still being able to play 90 minutes. But wouldn't it be better to have a fully fit Cucurella and a fully fit Gusto than a not fully fit Reece James in the team? Reece James is better than those two when fully fit. But I think Cucurella is better than a not fully fit Reece James.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. The one thing I will say is probably Maresca's not looking at it on a game-by-game basis. He's looking in terms of a long-term view. He's saying, I need James to be up to speed because I need him to be fit for this season. So I need him to play some games to get him up to speed with that. Maybe that's the sacrifice he decided to make today, and it worked off. It paid off. Still a risk regardless. Cucurella played a full 93 days ago, so there's also a question about how do you manage his load as well, even though he's obviously much less injury prone than Reece James is. So I think when all is said and done, I think, like I said earlier, the best option I think is a fully fit Reece James and maybe a fully fit Cucurella playing on the right and the left respectively. But until then, I don't mind him building him up like this, because I think we're going to need James to play in several different positions throughout this season. And so having him play different games in different positions and doing things that the boss is asking of him, I think it's a good way for him to start as he means to go on.
Yeah, that is fair. That is fair. We move on. Didn't mean to do that, but anyways, we move on to Moises Caicedo. A good game from him. I thought. I genuinely thought, other than the moment we conceded, I think it was fantastic. Otherwise, in that moment, he should have been a bit better. There was the one shot, you can see it here on the shot map, that was a bit unnecessary. But otherwise, I thought it was very good. 94%.
He was in a really good position for that shot as well. That shot needed to be on target. He's running onto it, needs to just get his head over the ball, keep it down. Then he couldn't manage, and it was high and wide, which is unfortunate.
I mean, it was his weak foot, but then just don't shoot then. Do you know what I
mean? Yeah, absolutely. In that case, you just don't shoot then. Yeah, I thought he was all right today. Decent performance. But I don't think he stood out quite as much as some of the other players who played well today did. But yeah, decent enough. I would probably give him a 7, I'd say. And that's kind of what we've come to expect from him now, like just a good all-round performance.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, tackles, 3 out of 4 is strong. 4 out of 7 ground duels is pretty good too. 1 out of 1 aerial duel is fair as well. Like I say, 94% passing accuracy. 7.5, I was thinking.
Yeah.
Shall we go with my 7.5 because we gave Reece the 8?
Yeah, fair enough.
There you go.
Being nice today,
because I don't want to sit here and debate it for too long. Why is the rating for James gone again? Bloody stupid website. Let's move on quickly to Romeo Lavia. And by this, I don't want to give Caicedo not enough credit. Myself and Ollie just have other things to do tonight, so we don't want to sit here and spend 20 minutes on every single individual. Romeo Lavia got an assist for Cole Palmer. Now, is it the most special assist in the world? No. But was it an assist that was decent in terms of, did he nick the ball away from Newcastle, potentially starting an attack? Instead, he nicked it to Palmer, and then Palmer did Palmer things. But yeah, I thought in particular in the first half, he struggled at times. I don't know
a lot in the first half
about it, but
yeah, I agree. After he's played a lot of games this season where he's been our best player, actually, Lavia, which is kind of crazy because he's still actually also been injured. So when he has played, he's played really well for us. But today, especially in the first half, thought he struggled a lot. And that kind of, and especially for the goal that we did concede, no, it was Caicedo that gave the ball away. For what I meant was for Fofana tweaking his knee. That actually started from Lavia giving the ball away cheaply in the midfield and starting Newcastle on a counter-attack, which then Fofana then rushes out to try and stop, and as he does that, he hurts himself. So, 2-1. Interesting. But, I think he probably came back into the game a little bit, showed some promise for sure. I would put him about on par with Fofana today. I think about a 5.5 seemed about right. I think whatever you give Fofana, you'd probably have to give Lavia, because I don't think he was any worse than him.
Interesting. Now, so far, we're exactly at a 50-50 between a 5 and a 5.5. So, ladies and gentlemen, please place your vote for Fofana's rating, which is in the live chat. Obviously, if you're on your phone, below us. If you're on desktop, next to us. So please place your vote there.
Could give him a 6, didn't quite make as many mistakes and did grow back into the game. I could see a 6. I wouldn't be upset with a 6.
I'd more give Fofana 5 and Lavia 5.5. I just don't think he warrants quite an average rating.
Yeah, I know what you mean. His first half performance.
He did get an assist, I know, but it felt more Palmer doing Palmer things than
you've got to take that into account. Surely,
Liverpool, right? More impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say 5.5. If Fofana gets a 5.5, we'll raise Lavia to a 6. For now, I think we'll put a 5.5.
We've built like a web of things here where everything affects everything else.
That's how it goes. Butterfly effect everywhere. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, let's see if did Andre Santos score again, because he already scored once for Strasbourg today. They've just made it 2-0. So it was actually him again. Andre Santos with the brace. So fair to Andre Santos.
Him coming in next season is going to be a big boost for us. I think he seems all action, can do it all. It seems.
Absolutely. I seem to be a big fan, especially for this role we're looking at, where you kind of turn up as a number 10 and then off the ball you're a defensive player. If he clearly has an eye for a goal, that's not a bad player to have arrive as this second number 10 for me. But we move on and we go to Gusto. Now, of course, we could have argued Gusto, talked about him before, because he's kind of a fullback, but because he first and foremost played essentially as a...
He just plays everywhere now, doesn't he?
it seems about right to mention him here. What did you make of him? Did you have similar feelings on him today as you did against Liverpool? Was it a bit different? What did you
I
think?
actually didn't. I actually thought he was good today.
Okay. You just can't shoot, can he?
Yeah, listen, he can't shoot for shit, and I understand that. He's not the best attacker. He really isn't. His crossing is decent to good. It's not phenomenal. His shooting is abysmal. And it says a lot. Like he's never scored ever in his professional career. I know he's still young, but he's never scored.
What? Has he not scored for us yet?
No, don't think so. I remember them saying it on commentary. He's never scored in his senior career. So yeah,
well, that changes my view on playing him in this position a little bit. I can't.
Yeah, when they said that, I thought the same. I thought he always seems to get himself into good positions, but my God, he cannot shoot for anything.
No.
But other than that, actually,
if he's never scored, why does he shoot with his weak foot so much? Try with your strong foot first, and then we talk about the weak foot, man.
He's playing on hard mode, man. But what I thought he was good today with was his ball distribution. I thought was pretty good. His passing seemed pretty strong. His defensive work was really good. He especially when Fofana was struggling a lot with when after he's tweaked his knee. Gusto came back a lot and was there as kind of like the nominal right back. He really put a shift in today. He was up and down the pitch doing absolutely everything. So he had a good game, I thought.
Yeah, just for the goal that we conceded, I thought he didn't defend that well. But otherwise, I agree. Maybe one other moment where I thought he got beaten a tad easily. There was one silly foul he gave away, similar to Madueke, close to the edge of the box, where I was like, why are you making that foul here, please? But otherwise, I agree. And I still think the most impressive thing, and I have to mention it, just like I thought against Liverpool, to do your job so well at right back and to still be a good passing outlet every time we attack as a central attacking mid, that's a lot of running.
It's a lot to do. That's kind of what I'm taking into account. Okay, if he's made the odd, foul, or if he's made the odd kind of lazy thing, he was doing a lot of work today. So I don't blame him for being tired. He had an awful lot to do. He seems to be Maresca's utility man. He kind of just plays wherever he is needed. And he seems to
Maresca loves players like that. So
and he seems to do a decent to good job wherever he is. So I really do want to see him up his attacking output though, because if he's going to be getting into those attacking positions, we need to start seeing them. Even if one goes in every 10 times you have a go, it needs to be more than 0%, which is what it is at the moment.
Fair enough. What rating would you give him? I was thinking 6.5, maybe.
Yeah, 6.5 is fair. We could push it to a 7, maybe, but I think that that incident on the goal, it wasn't greatly defended, so I'm happy to give him a 6.5.
Very good. Very good. And we move on to the man himself. I gave him the cold emoji so far, but obviously the goal was great, even though it was more so just shocking goalkeeping from Nick Pope, in my opinion. Also, the goal that in the end didn't stand. That's a phenomenal finish as well into the bottom corner. But
what more can this guy do? Funnily enough, I think I said it online after the Liverpool game. I said Palmer will be fine. He'll come back and he'll probably score a brace in the next game. You know how close I was to predicting that correctly. It's really unfortunate. Just literally a toenail away from being spot on with that. But yeah, he was really good today. He looked like you could see it almost immediately, in the way that we started playing and the way we were playing through him. He knew that against Liverpool, he didn't get himself on the ball much. He wasn't really making things happen. He just wasn't the Cole Palmer that we know. And today, he just immediately turned up and did his thing. What more can he do? And people like to talk about, whether he's just a stats merchant, if he's just getting goals and assists all the time. I actually thought this was one of his best performances for us, and he only scored once. Could have scored twice, but he only scored once. Because the passing was really good. He made several passes that were absolutely outrageous. There was the one for the goal itself on that. He played it out to Neto on the left-hand side, which is a ridiculous ball on the turn, as he kind of spun around and just barely saw him. Yeah, he had an absolutely ridiculous game today. It just goes to show that if people call Palmer a stats merchant, they don't watch him. Because if you do watch him, you see everything that he does, the way he the way he presses, how intelligent he is when he does that, how intelligent he is when he's playing with the ball to his feet, whether to run left or right, when to pass it. He makes the right decision 99 times out of 100. And yeah, I can't give him enough praise. I think I would give him a An 8.5 today. Our best player, for sure.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was just looking for something that we can show that we don't have to get copyrighted for, and here I got it up. I'm even potentially thinking a 9. I was trying to look for
Yeah,
other stats.
I could take a 9. The only thing that takes it off that is he just didn't get his second goal. Just like I said, it's like a hair off.
Yeah.
I think he was absolutely phenomenal today in every other phase of play. I thought.
Yeah. No, literally. And I just want to highlight this passing. This pass is so ridiculous. Look where he receives the ball. Let me zoom in. He receives the ball here, takes it over to his right, then plays the through ball. Essentially, no look on the.
How does he see that with Neto so far behind the last man of the fence?
Literally, literally, and then he curls it between the line or between the Newcastle players for Neto to run onto. Now Neto does really well here. The defender does quite badly. Why does he go down? Keep going with Neto. Like if that was our defender, I'd be quite annoyed. But Neto showed incredible pace. You can't see him there, but Jackson is somewhere over here. Neto just kind of squares it to him, and Jackson puts it home for a great goal in that game. But that Palmer pass, it's just outrageous. I can't find it now, but the stat that I read was in his last 15 games at Stamford Bridge, I think Premier League games at Stamford Bridge, Cole Palmer has 19 goals and 5 assists in 15 games. That is mental.
That is absolutely outrageous. This guy
has now, by the way, overtaken Eden Hazard as our highest goal scorer since the season Hazard retired, or since maybe whatever. And Cole Palmer has
been here for a season and a half.
Almost less than half the games. Then Hazard had to get the same number of goals. Now we all know Hazard wasn't as much of a goal player as Cole Palmer is, but Cole Palmer is so good.
But that's also kind of why I'm putting a lot of praise on Palmer's performance today, because he wasn't just getting the goals and the assists today. He really ran the show in a way that, in a way that Hazard might have done. Yeah. And this is the best player in the Premier League and one of the best players in the world, and we're so lucky to get to watch him play for us.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, Elias also makes a good point. Sancho would not have got that ball. I would assume Palmer wouldn't have played that ball if he knew Sancho played in the position today, because that's quite how smart Palmer is. But yeah, I agree with Max P. I think he is the best player in the world at the moment. Like, on the one hand, I think it's good that we're resting him in Europe. On the other hand, I'm like, imagine how much he could stat pad against these teams. Imagine
he scored about 70 goals.
Imagine Palmer gets to play against Noah. Like, he might score 10.
We'll probably put him in the squad when we in January when we kick on and into the knockouts of the Conference League, which it very much looks like we're going to reach. So he's got his chance for his stat padding to come, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously in the knockouts, the opponents should and will be a tad better, a tad more difficult, but yeah. I mean, you said 8.5. Are you adamant on? I'm just feeling.
No, I'm not. Give him a 9,
more
man.
Than Reece.
I could
more it that I'm thinking.
I could talk about him all day. Give him a 9.
Like, if we gave Reece a 7.5, I would have been fine with a 8.5 for Palmer, but I think he deserves one more, if that makes sense. A whole point.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. He had a really, really good game today. Very impressed.
Very good. Very good. We move on and we go to a slightly less positive, so we can finish it off on 2 positive notes from the starting 11. Noni Madueke today. I was a little bit disappointed. Sorry, guys, I didn't show you any stats of Cole Palmer. Honestly, the stats don't quite prove how good he was, but he had good passing accuracy. He had even good ground duels, 4 out of 7. He had 4 out of 8 long balls. So, not much to complain about from that sense either. Noni Madueke, though. I mean, in the first half, it was okay still. But I feel like the longer the game went on, the more he just didn't take his man on. I'm like, that's your whole point. That's the whole reason why you're playing. And then he also started giving silly fouls away, and then Maresca took him off 20 seconds later. So clearly Maresca wasn't particularly happy with that either.
To be fair, we all said it at the same time. We went, get him off. And a minute later, Maresca takes him off. Yeah, he struggled. He struggled today. I thought, we gave him the ball a lot as well. He went down that right hand side a lot. I said before the game he really needed to get at Dan Bird and Lewis Hall, and he just kind of didn't. He didn't really turn any attacks into really meaningful chances. There was a couple times he tried to get the ball across into the box. A couple times he shot, but just didn't really go anywhere. And listen, I don't mind that he tries to make something happen every time he gets the ball, but it just didn't work out for him today.
No, it didn't. It did. What rating would you give him? I was thinking like 5 to 5.5.
Yeah, give him a 5. He was by his standards, he wasn't great today.
No, he wasn't. I agree. Now, is that maybe a slightly hard 5? Maybe, but
compared to I think the thing is you're looking at him compared to the rest of the attack today, and the rest of the attack were really solid, really efficient, really impactful, and he was none of those things. So it's by comparison, it looks a lot worse.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We move on to Pedro Neto. Gets his start. Interestingly, because obviously Cucurella started in the Conference League, didn't start today. Mudryk started in the Conference League, didn't start today. Now, I know Neto got taken off after an hour, but still, he started on Thursday and started again today. Sancho being, in the end, an unused sub, which is interesting. Now, I'm sure it's very much position dependent. And what's going to be interesting now is who starts Thursday. Wednesday.
Yeah, because
Sancho or Mudryk?
Surely it won't be Neto in that game, but but it is interesting because, like we were talking about with load management before, of course. Now Neto didn't play the full game only 3 days ago, but it was only 3 days ago. So still played an hour, played the full 90 today, and didn't look any worse for wear for it. To be honest, had a really, really good game today. Probably his best game for us, maybe up there for sure.
Absolutely. Football even gave him man of the match, which is interesting. Ever so slightly ahead of Cole Palmer. I think that's maybe a little bit far, but
they just didn't want to give it to Palmer for a change, didn't they? But
probably.
I thought in particular, like whenever he got the ball, he was always trying to make something happen. A bit like Noni, but he was more successful in it. He was beating his man, which I think was Tino Livramento, quite a lot on the right hand side there. Really impactful. And you know what? The other thing that I really liked from him today, every single time that, especially when Newcastle were experiencing times where they grew into the game and they were pinging the ball around a bit. When we lose the ball high up the pitch, the first person you see sprinting back every time is Neto. Every time sprinting back as fast as he can to get back and help out the team. And now it didn't always work, but it's really nice to see that.
For example, when we conceded because Lavia tried to press, the man got around Lavia. Neto chased him. And Neto could have just taken a guy down, taken a yellow. The goal never happens. He decided not to do that. They kept running, go past Caicedo as well, cross the ball, goal. So that's where it's a bit unfortunate. I'm not going to blame someone like Neto for not foul in that moment.
It's a tough one. But yeah, I thought he had a really good game defensively, offensively, both sides of the ball today. He was really solid. I was very impressed.
Yep, exactly. Obviously, got the assist. You can see there, 93% passing accuracy, only misplaced 2, which is very strong. 2 out of 3 shots were on target. 3 out of 4 dribbles were successful. Noni only attempted 2. 2 out of 4 crosses is also pretty good. 1 out of 2 long balls. Duels, okay, not amazing. 3 out of the 9 and whatever. But I think that's also like, I don't know, it felt like more than that to me. But hey, it is what it is. Does he get an 8 for you, or does he get...
No, he gets a Caicedo-ish 7.5, I think. I think it's about right, because I don't think he was quite as good as James.
What do you think of his header, by the way, that he put against the post? Do you think that's one like should have scored it, or one unlucky?
Hard to know. Like none of our attackers can head the ball, so like I'm just surprised it even hit the frame of the goal. To be honest with you, like it's not
officially not hitting the goal.
yeah, officially, but should he have done better? Maybe. It's hard to know. It's a funny angle. It's a weird height. He's done well to actually, because he has dueled for that header as well. Like it's
and he did out-jump Livramento on it, who is a good bit taller than he is. So I think it's
like there's something to it. It's contested. I don't think you can necessarily expect it to go in. I think I would have loved for it to be on target, but obviously he's trying to guide it into the top corner. Fair enough to him. It just didn't work out.
Yeah, exactly. I also liked how, unlike Noni, when he didn't feel like he could take the man on 1v1 to put the cross in, he went inside and put the cross in with the other side and still put a dangerous ball in, whether he shot or put a ball in. Maresca usually just passed it back to Caicedo, which I was like, come on, man. I need a bit more than that. And that's why Maresca got a fairly low rating today. Move on to the last starter of the day. Nicolas Jackson took his goal well. Was it the most difficult goal in the world? No, of course, any striker in the world should score that goal. But he still took it well, held his run, didn't do anything silly.
I think it shows how people don't watch us though, because if you asked maybe half of Premier League fans who weren't Chelsea fans, does Jackson score that like a second, like you see like a freeze frame, does he score that? I think half of them say no.
Possible. It's possible.
His reputation. I've never known a player to have such a gulf in what they're thought of by other teams versus their own. Jackson, I thought he was really, really solid today. I thought he was really good today. Ran Shah and Burn ragged absolutely all game. gave him a lot of difficulties. Like you said, for his goal, he took it really well. Lots of nice little flicks and tricks. So that's actually something we didn't say about Palmer, by the way, is controlling with the ball is absolutely outrageous. When, several times he touches the ball, like just round the defender and keeps going. But Jackson did kind of some similar stuff as well today. Just impressed. Thought he was.
There was this one lovely turn. Well, he would have had the assist for Palmer's ever so slight offside goal.
Exactly. His passing today was solid as well. He always seemed to get involved. Could he have been a bit more involved? Maybe. But a lot of our attacks and stuff, it seemed to end up going through Palmer and through Neto a lot of the time. So I don't know. It's one of them. I think maybe we could have seen a little more from him, but at the same time, I was happy with his performance today.
There you go. 13 out of 17 bars as well. He had only one shot. He scored that one shot. Could have been a little bit more involved. I would give him the same 7.5 as Neto. You could make a case for an 8, I think. But I think if you give him an 8, you need to give Neto an 8. I think both a 7.5 is fair. Would you go?
I was actually going to say maybe about 7.5. I think because I was going to say maybe a 7 because although, like you say, the goal it's not the hardest goal to score. But I think if you're saying you were trending maybe towards an 8 and I was trending more towards a 7.5 sounds about fair.
Fair dues. Now I think this is a bit of a big question, but instant response, Ollie.
I'm trying to think, right? Because I'm trying to think of other leagues. Because is he top 10 in the Premier League? No doubt.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely no doubt. Is he top 5 in the Premier League? There's a question there. I think he's up there. Yeah. 5th, 6th.
I mean, who would you take over Jackson? I would only take Haaland over Jackson.
You take Haaland over Jackson. I don't know. He proved he was better than Isak today, and a lot of people would take Isak over.
Isak has 2 goals this season, and one of them was today.
Yeah. Watkins, you would probably take Watkins over Jackson, but they're very similar players.
But I feel like doesn't Duran score way more for Villa this season than Watkins does?
I don't know. Solanke's 50-50. I think you've got to think about other teams. So are you realistically saying, are there 7 or 8 other strikers across all the other leagues who are better than him? I don't think so. So I think you might be right. He might be a top 10 striker in the world.
I mean,
granted, maybe he's like...
You've got Lewandowski, you've got Mbappe, even if he's in bad form. You've got...
granted, you might have him... He might be like 8th, 9th, 10th. But I think he genuinely might be up there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, PSG don't even have a striker, so it's clearly better than everyone in the French league. So, Bundesliga, I don't see anyone other than Kane being better. Maybe, does anyone want to make a case for like Openda? I don't think he's better than Jackson. So,
no.
Who's the Dortmund striker now that Füllkrug left? Jamie Gittins? Is he a striker? The English lad?
Might be him.
I think he's not better than Jackson, that's for sure.
No, maybe Guirassy. Guirassy probably is a little better.
Yeah, good shout. But is he better than Jackson, man?
I don't know. He offers something different, doesn't he? Like it's hard to know. Maybe as a pure striker, you would say so.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I think there's clearly a handful who are better than him, but that list of strikers who are better than Jackson is shrinking every week.
Yep. And for me, I think Jackson is on the verge of top 5, like in and around like between 5th and 7th best striker in the world is where I would put him. But obviously, we're going a bit too deep into it. Then let's look at and talk about our subs. Let me just go over to the other side. We made 4 subs today, and none of them was Reece James. Just quickly, I know we spoke a lot about Reece James already today, Ollie, but did that surprise you? It surprised me.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise, or like at the very least, I was surprised until then I learned that when he took Gusto off, and Gusto was kind of like he was playing as like the nominal right back. So then James shifted over to the right after that. So we've talked and stuff before about like, do we shifting the whole team around sort of a couple of 2/3 through the game? Is it good for us? Is it bad for us? Is it somewhere in the middle? But I think it worked. I think it worked today. So. I don't know. It's hard to tell. But I was a little bit surprised that James played 90 minutes, but also just really pleased that he got through it without getting injured.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. I mean, we can see it on screen, the 4 subs that we did make. Mikhailo Mudryk, Enzo Fernandez, Cucurella, and Nkunku. The only one I really have much to say about is Mudryk.
He didn't do anything, did he?
He had that one big chance, but that's it.
He had one big chance, but other than that, played half an hour and was more or less totally anonymous. Neto looked far, far more impactful than he did.
But did Neto look far more impactful in the same period that Mudryk was on the pitch? I would say none of our players looked impactful in that period.
No, I think that's fair to say. But certainly before he came on, Neto looked much, much better. But Mudryk really didn't do a lot with the ball when he came on. And Kunku is a funny thing. We kind of spoke about him, didn't we? Because we said, he was actively involved and quite impactful in trying to get the ball. It just didn't quite work out, and the ref seemed to have something against him today.
That what he in the end got booked for, that foul, ultimate Maresca got booked for, is the most ridiculous free kick call I've seen in a while. I can't lie. How it was so blatantly the ball. While who was that? Was it Isak? No, one of the Newcastle players stepping right on the Achilles of Reece James. No yellow card. I'm like, excuse me. How is that fine? Studs into the Achilles and you're not given a yellow card?
I don't know, man. Cuckoo, when he came on, he was good. Obviously, like we said, he played 90 minutes 3 days ago, so he was never going to get loads of time, but he looked good when he came on, and Enzo looked all right as well.
He actually played 90 because he got subbed off after an hour for Guy.
That's actually very true. Yeah, and then Enzo, he came on for Lavia. He was fine, he
was running around, he
didn't put a foot wrong. I would say that he didn't make as many mistakes as Lavia did, so you got to give him something for that, for sure.
Yeah, I guess so. Did Cucurella do anything? Played 3 passes and was in 0 duels, so I would say that counts as he didn't do anything.
Not enough. Not enough to really matter, at least.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just a real shame that Mudryk didn't manage to score that. I'm a little bit surprised that he didn't take it on his right foot. Maybe he wasn't aware quite how much time he had, because he had surprising amount of time and space in the middle of the box. But when another day goes in, would have been nice. But, hey, he's just keeping his usual Newcastle goal for Wednesday. It's fine. It's fine.
Knock him out.
Finish it off with the manager. Sorry, you were saying? My bad.
I was saying, knock him out on next week and all is forgiven.
Exactly. Let's talk about Maresca then. Difficult one, because I'm still a bit unsure, but I think this was the best plan for the game. Playing Reece James as left centre back, and
it's one of them, isn't it? It worked, but you're not sure how effective it really was. Clearly, it worked for the players. I mean, a lot of the players played well today. Only a handful really struggled. Subs were pretty inconsequential. Like you said, there was that sort of tactical battle between him and Howe. We changed things, then they did, then we did again, then they did again, and we just about came out on top for it. So it was a good tactical battle from two very good coaches.
Yep.
I would say I would give Maresca a 6.5 today. I think he did enough with the quality that we have to win the game.
Interesting. I'm unsure still. I was thinking 7 to 7.5. So now I'm like, if I say 7.5, it just gives him a 7. But
I think a 7. I would agree on a 7. A 7's fair enough.
Yeah, I think a 7 is fair, because I see what you're saying, but then I'm like, I mean, if Palmer's goal is ever so slightly not offside, if their goal is ever so slightly offside,
if we get the penalty, then you were looking at we've won the game 4-1 or whatever, and then we're saying it's a Maresca masterclass. I get it, but just just some of those other. I guess it's the thing. The thing is you could say that today it was quite risky what he did, and it did work. But could we have done what we did today without taking that kind of risk?
Exactly.
Maybe we couldn't. Maybe
not only the risk you're talking about, I think, in James positionally, but 2 other risks in keeping Reece on the pitch for 90 and also keeping Fofana on the pitch after his whole injury situation. Those are both also risks, if you ask me. The question is that Maresca making that choice, especially on Fofana? That's probably the medical staff and the player more so than the manager. And he has to trust the medical staff and the player on that, because Maresca can't decide, no, you're not fine anymore. He can't decide that from 50 yards away, can he? On James, was probably pre-planned, I assume.
It's also not. Maybe I'm not giving enough credit then, because considering that was all pre-planned and the players have presumably known the way that we're going to play in this game for at least a few days. They've done all right, haven't they? He's done okay. It's all pre-planned kind of in advance. We had a midweek game, tough game today against a well-drilled team, very physical team. I could be convinced by 7.5.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, because you initially said 6.5, let's just keep it at a 7. I think not overdoing it is also important, because I think there's also more in there for Maresca, because like we started well, then we lost our footing a little bit, but it's always difficult to judge. Is that tactical changes from your opponent? Is it just momentum? Because then we obviously scored super soon after half time again, but then kind of lost after Neto hit the post. We didn't really do anything until the very end with that penalty and that other Kunku chance that he didn't do enough with. There was a period of 20-25 minutes where it was basically just us hanging on a little bit. And I'm like, in those moments, I would have hoped for a little bit more. So that's why maybe I think a 7.
I suppose the thing is, though, as well, is like there's a bit about to talk about in terms of like game management and game state. Sometimes you have to suffer a little bit, and like if teams they're stringing passes together, they're working 10% harder for each other in the moment. They're just doing things that they just couldn't do 10 minutes ago. I know it sounds silly, but sometimes you do just have to hang in for a bit. And so I'm also kind of impressed with the way that we did hang on in the end today. We were defensively resolute. Like clearly Maresca kept us organized. There was one point actually as well, which it was later in the game, and the ball was in Newcastle's half, and it pinged up, or like it pinged up into a 50-50. Caicedo was the wrong side of the defender, and Maresca, I heard him on the sidelines through the TV. He was shouting second ball, like get the second ball. To be fair, Caicedo sprinted, won the second ball, and nothing came of it, unfortunately, because one of the player, I can't remember who he passed it to, fucked up the chance in the end. But it's interesting just to hear that as well. To see like what like him giving those instructions on the sidelines, actually seeing what sort of things he's trying to tell the players in real time to do. And so I think I would be then inclined to say that because of that, clearly part of our defensive solidity today was because of him.
Yeah, that's fair. There was actually a lot of moments where I heard Maresca shout on the sideline. So often I heard him shout for Romeo. I heard him shout for Nico. I heard him shout for Reece. There was a lot of shouting from Maresca going on today. So yeah, and I do like that. I do like a manager getting involved. It's super interesting. I guess let's quickly, the 5.5 for Fofana 1. So we'll give him that 5.5. I did say if Fofana gets a 5.5, Lavia gets a 6. So we'll adapt their ratings. Just a super last thing that I quickly want to mention. It was a very interesting press conference by Maresca, which was just done with one journalist. I keep forgetting her name, Ray on Twitter, who has got a lot of praise from Chelsea fans for a while. And she did kind of a one-on-one press conference with Maresca. And one of the most interesting things that Maresca spoke about in terms of tactical changes, he said that when you've been with your team for a while, you can make in-game changes after 10, 20 minutes in the game, no problem. But when you don't know your team that well and they don't know you that well, you don't make tactical changes in the game. You wait until halftime to explain it properly. And I thought that was not something I'd ever thought about, really. That in terms of how long the manager and the team have worked together, that also influences how quickly tactical changes can be made during games. Never considered that, if I'm being honest.
It makes sense, doesn't it? Like
it makes complete sense. It makes me wonder how often have Chelsea even experienced that? Because how often have we kept the manager for more than a year or whatever? Do you know what I mean? So how often have we even managed to?
It's interesting
benefit from that. I don't know.
It's an interesting thing because you can also see then in some of our other games that, and maybe we're still not necessarily quite there yet, why our games seem to go up a level, at least like just after half time. Like we say a lot about like what is Maresca saying to these guys at half time, because under Pochettino it was the complete opposite. We'd go in at half time having played reasonably well, maybe be 1-0, 1-1, and we'd come out and we just shit the bed for most of the season. With Maresca, it's kind of the opposite. We go in, play really well, 1-0, 1-1, and then we come out and we absolutely spend at least the first 10-15 minutes of the second half just absolutely blazing away. So clearly there's something, like he's saying. It's interesting to me that he's referring to that as maybe necessarily a tactical change in that moment. And so I guess in a sense it's kind of, in a way, it's proof that his tactical sense works, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
That he's making those changes at halftime. The players are taking them on board. They're implementing them, and it's working.
There was also an interesting moment at Liverpool where Gusto came over and essentially asked for tactical instructions. And Maresca explained that he said, well, Gusto wasn't 100% sure about something tactically, and he wanted clarification, and he gave it to him. And so I like that. I like that a lot. But ladies and gentlemen, I think it's about time we wrap this one up. A good weekend of football. Obviously, Arsenal-Liverpool is still going on. At the moment, Arsenal are still 2-1 up.
Come on,
Inter,
Liverpool.
Juve, also crazy game, by the way. 1-0 Inter, then 2-1 Juve, now it's 3-2 Inter, and we're still in the first half. Mental. Like, when have you ever had that in the Serie A? 5 goals in one half? What? That's crazy. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, please check out Ollie's channels, all sorts of places. Ollie J. Carpenter on Twitter, at the Bridge Pod on Twitter is his podcast.
Yeah.
Please do check that out. I've been a guest there before as well, so check them out. They're a good bunch of guys, so make sure you listen to that. Obviously, mine and Pys's podcast, Chelsea Unfiltered, with a new episode coming out on Tuesday, as it does every week. Link is down in the description, so please check out last week's episode if you haven't already. And of course, follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts to be notified when we upload the next episode on Tuesday. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe. Hit that like button if you haven't done that yet either. That would be very much appreciated. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. Up the Chelsea. Cole Palmer is the best player in the world, and we will see you next time.